Coming to let's start with our devotional chanting. That will be a better way to start. Welcome to direct your awareness towards a Buddha image that you can see in your house, or if necessary, you can direct awareness to the small statue behind me. And bow 3 times, giving your respect and devotion to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Chanting together with me as you read out this words in Pali. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supartipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhanusati Iti Piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddha Vingya Charana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisadam Sarati Sabta Devam Hanusanam Buddha Bhagavati. Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sandiktriko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatang Veditambo Vinyuhiti Supartipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Udupartipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyaya Partipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Samiki Partipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadidang Chattari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Pungala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakyoneyo Anjali Karuneyo Anuttarang Punya Ketang Lokasati. Requesting the 3 refuges and 5 precepts, please recite this together with me. My young Aye visung visung rakanataya tisaranena saha panchasilani yakchama dutiyampi mayang aye visung visung rakanataya tisaranena saha panchasilani yakchama tatiyampi mayang aye visung visung rakanataya tisaranena saha panchasilani yachama. Now again, the homage to the triple gem. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. The three refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami. To the Buddha I go for refuge, to the Dhamma I go for refuge, to the Sangha I go for refuge. Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. For the second time to the Buddha I go for refuge. For the second time to the Dhamma I go for refuge. For the second time to the Sangha I go for refuge. Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. For the third time to the Buddha I go for refuge. For the third time to the Dhamma I go for refuge. For the third time to the Sangha I go for refuge. Now the precepts. Reciting together with me. Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living being. Adinnadana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking whatever is not given. Kame sumikchachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from misconduct in the sensual area. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from false and harmful speech. Sura meraya majjapamadaptana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicating drinks and drugs leading to carelessness. And then bowing 3 times. The principal teaching of the Buddha. Sabapapa sakaranang kusala supasampada sachitta pariodapanang etang buddhana sasanang. Not to do any evil, to do good, to cultivate the good, to purify the mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. And then the meditation on loving kindness. Sambe satta sukhita hontu. May all living beings be happy. Avera hontu. May all living beings be free from animosity. Ambya panja hontu. May all living beings be free from oppression. Anika hontu. May all living beings be free from trouble. Sukhi attanang pariharantu. May all living beings look after themselves with ease. Let us come to a comfortable and balanced meditation posture. Whether sitting in a chair or on the cushion with crossed legs, take a minute to arrange the body in a comfortable posture so that you can try to stay completely still for 30 minutes. Aware of the posture of the body, the location of the physical body in the room where you are, the weight of the body on the seat or the cushion. The way the body is upright and balanced, not slouched over, but not too rigid. Feeling the position of the head balanced so that it's not leaning this way or that way, but balanced. Letting the shoulders relax, letting the belly be soft, keeping the back upright, letting the hands rest in the lap. Letting the knees and ankles and legs relax. Coming to awareness of this physical body. Noticing the parts of the body. Going from head to toe. aware of every sensation that comes along. Touching sensation on the skin, from the clothing or the air, or touching the furniture, coming through hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, aware of every sensation as it comes along. And with every sensation, aware of the feeling that comes with that. Is it pleasant or unpleasant? Or is it in between or neither? Noticing the pleasant feeling that makes the mind want to stay there. Or the unpleasant feeling that makes the mind want to turn away. Or the neutral feeling, which is difficult to notice. Giving equal attention to every sensation and the feeling that comes with that. aware of impermanence in every sensation. It's there, it's gone. Investigating, seeing impermanence. Finding the joyful interest as we stay mindful, awake, alert, watching out for every sensation, seeing the impermanence, experiencing that flow, that happiness, that bliss of just watching and understanding. Whatever arises, even something painful, we can take an interest and watch, see if it's permanent or impermanent. Investigate. allowing the body energy or the breath to become more calm, more tranquil, more subtle. Letting the feelings become calmed down. Letting the thoughts and the mind become more calmed down, more serene, more tranquilized. letting the mind absorb, immersed in this calm awareness with a subtle, tranquilized mind. The mind is still, and awareness is fully connected with that stillness. And equanimity is closely watching over the mind immersed in that stillness. And coming to the end of this brief meditation, dropping out to ordinary consciousness, ordinary state of mind, and noticing the difference from that more quiet, absorbed state of mind into the ordinary mind. When you're ready, just open the eyes. I invite everyone to take 5 minutes just to sit and relax, or else to stretch the body, and come back in 5 minutes for a Dhamma discussion. Just now, Diana inquired about where to get a copy of the guided meditation that we just did. These guided meditations and Dhamma talks only occur one time in the whole universe, never to be repeated. But you can find it on YouTube and review it there. I want to speak tonight about the 7 factors of awakening. For those who are regularly attending our programs, you remember that last Sunday, Suvijana spoke about the sutta on ethics, which included a description of the 7 factors of awakening. There's a reason why I'm bringing it up at this time. Recently, we've been going back to the basics or the fundamentals of our practice. And it seems to me that in a certain way, we've spent a lot of time dwelling in the first noble truth, which is the truth of dukkha, or suffering. We've been looking at the counterproductive, toxic, unwholesome patterns that we may find within our own mind, and how to work with gradually unwinding and finding our way out of being trapped or caught up in such negative patterns. So it seemed very important as a balance to bring out some positive, wholesome, onward-leading, safe patterns that can be cultivated and developed, so that, for one thing, it would make our meditation, in a way, less discouraging, because one is not always looking for the faults and investigating the faults, but instead, well, it is possible to notice when the faults or the negativities are absent. And this is something that I have encouraged you to mark very clearly with mindfulness. So if at a particular moment in time, say, right just at this moment, I could say, are you holding a grudge against anybody right now? And if you're not holding any grudges just at this moment, then you could mark that clearly and say, oh, this mind is free from holding grudges at this moment. And that's a positive thing that can be noticed and marked out. And it's a way to gladden the mind by noticing that. The factors of awakening is a series of very beneficial patterns or habits of mind that can be aroused, cultivated, and developed. So even if these habits are not present in you, it is possible to find out how to learn about them, reflect about them, integrate them, and then intentionally, by just making the intention to bring up a wholesome factor, to perhaps bring it up in a weak way, and then by noticing and observing very clearly what it's like when a good habit or a positive factor is present in the mind, then by observing, seeing clearly, it can become stronger. And then, with exerting intention, these factors can become our very good friends. They can become patterns that when we set our mind to it, we can keep continuously present and with us and available for us, or even if they're not continuously in our active conscious awareness, they can be patterns that are so well developed and so trained, like if you train your pet, your cat or your dog, and then you give your little signal like a whistle or call their name or something, and then your pet comes running to you. And so it's just the same way. The factors of awakening should be like your pets who depend on you, and you can bring them at any time. I took some notes on what I want to say. So what is the purpose of the factors of awakening? So according to Buddhism, suffering, that's their main problem, is rooted in ignorance. You could say that ignorance could be the experience of being caught up in evil, unwholesome states of mind. You could say that ignorance is not perceiving the nature of the five aggregates as being not a self, but just an aggregation of phenomena. Ignorance could be not perceiving how the senses work with their objects and the contact and everything that arises from the contact with the senses. Ignorance could be not perceiving the emptiness of the elements, or the elements of materiality. It could be not perceiving the reality of the Four Noble Truths. So these things that we don't perceive because we haven't trained the mind to look in that way, to see in that way, can be blocked. The perception of these realities that we need to see can be blocked because of the five hindrances. So we've been speaking earlier of the hindrances of sensuality, ill will, sloth and torpor, remorse and restlessness, and doubt. We've spoken of them as being factors that interfere with meditation, that make it difficult or impossible to be able to sit down and connect with the object of meditation or the pattern of meditation and stay there, because the mind is always pulled away by the hindrances. But another powerful thing that the hindrances do is they block wisdom. So the hindrances are like being in a cage or being covered with a blanket, or somehow like you need to see, I guess the windshield is completely covered with dirt, so you can't see out. That's what the hindrances are doing. The hindrances, we learned before, are nourished by unskillful, immoral actions of the body, speech, and mind, and also they're nourished by non-restraint of the senses. But the hindrances can be denourished and starved out of existence by developing the 7 factors of awakening. So this is a little bit of theory, but the reason why it's so valuable to develop the 7 factors of awakening is because they denourish the hindrances and make a clearing where it's possible for wisdom to arise. And with that, we have the possibility to come to the end of suffering. So I'll pause here for a second. I'll see if there are any questions about why the 7 factors of awakening are important, or anything that you've learned, because you probably may have taken this class before or heard other teachers speaking about it. What you know about the factors of awakening. I see one question. Do I give myself a trigger to remember how you feel when I feel positive about a situation? Yes. We can trigger ourselves with what is a great trigger for each person might be something that's kind of individual, an image or something that came to us in a dream or in a reflection or in a meditation that helps us remember something good. I'll give you an example. Once I had a meditation during the wintertime in West Virginia, where there was a lot of snow, rain, ice, sleet, freezing rain, freezing ice, freezing snow, melting snow, freezing snow, very cold and frozen the ground was, and very, you couldn't see the earth. And as I was struggling at the time, it occurred to me that my wisdom in me was like a seed that had fallen on the ground. And the seed is now buried under 6 feet of snow and ice, or not 6 feet, 6 inches of snow and ice in this freezing wetness, just sitting there. But while it's sitting there completely not accessible, slowly, 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 it's becoming soft because of the moisture. And then later on, when spring comes, the weather will change and it will get warm, and then it will break open and start to grow into a plant. And so that whole story is like became one image for me, which is my image for faith, or saddha. That even if I can't see the result now, I have the faith to when the conditions turn, the effort I make will be productive. That's an example of how you can be creative and use your own imagination to make triggers for yourself to remember what it's like when these good factors are present. Now I'll call on Damon.
Right. So you were going to jump into the probably the first factor, which is mindfulness.
Yes.
And my understanding of that as a first factor, I started to read a little bit, and I thought it was very accessible as a beginner. They really stressed, in very plain English, they seem to lay out that mindfulness amounts to heedfulness in every moment, not just in meditation mindfulness, but as you're walking around, just this constant heedfulness about your thoughts, your movements, your actions, avoiding evil, just this constant vigilant watchfulness. And is that kind of why it's the first and kind of primary? Yeah, thank you.
Good. So you gave the first part of my talk for me. Yes, indeed. I was looking at an introduction to the 7 factors of awakening by Bhante Piyadasi. This is something that was written about 60 or 70 years ago, but it's still very current. And he mentioned there's a word called appamada, which has the special meaning of vigilance or heedfulness. And Piyadasi was saying actually sati and appamada are very closely connected. So staying awake, remembering to be awake, remembering to pay attention, remembering to be aware, and without any further efforts to cause oneself to always be perfect or something, just noticing how it is in actuality. Now, there is a second, all these things have 2 meanings. And the meaning that this meaning of heedfulness is on the one track, which is sort of like the track that's developed about focusing the 7 factors as it relates to working with the internal states of mind, the internal psychology. There's another track, which is also true, which is focused on the Dhamma, or the teachings taught by the Blessed One. And in that way, as Richard was mentioning last time, you could read the 4 foundations of mindfulness and see that that sutta, it's actually a series of recollections and teachings about different aspects of contemplations, things to reflect and think about. And even in the sutta that we you were reading with Ayya Tataloka, with Ayya Sivijana last time, it said that the sutta has met some bhikkhus, and then they heard the Dhamma from the bhikkhus. And after hearing that Dhamma, they withdraw from the world and they have a think, and they remember the Dhamma that they heard, and they think about the Dhamma that they heard, and that is called mindfulness. So, let's keep these 2 tracks in mind as 2 different ways of interpreting the 7 factors of awakening. What Damon just said about just the simple fact of remembering to be aware, remembering to be awake, to remember to notice what's going on, especially internally, like what's going on with this body and with this mind, with these intentions, with these mental factors. So I'll go ahead to the second factor, which is called, in Pali, it's called Dhamma Vichaya, which means investigation of Dhamma. And here, the Dhamma has 2 meanings. A Dhamma is a phenomenon that can be experienced, a Dhamma that can be experienced in the mind by a person. So then this factor of investigation, on the one hand, has the idea of exploring what's going on with our awareness. So is to notice the contact of the senses, the external sense object and the corresponding sense faculty, and the contact. Here I'm outside tonight, so there's a lot of like fresh breezes coming on, and I've got a heat lamp, so there's a little bit of warmth coming from the heat lamp and coolness coming from the breeze over there. And so I can notice there's that sensation, and then how does it affect the mind? how is it being processed in the mind? So that's one way of understanding what investigation is. And in particular, that investigation is so helpful when we notice those things are the wholesome positive factors, and those things that are the negative factors are where our true happiness lies, or where suffering lies, and seeing the cause and effect, like what is keeping us locked into a toxic pattern. Or if we are in a toxic pattern and we break out of it, oh, what happened? How did that happen? How did that pattern break up? That's what the investigation is about. Seeing how our psychology operates, how the mind operates. And then alternatively, the other way of looking at it is the Dhamma, the lessons that we heard from the bhikkhu that have been, or from the bhikkhuni, from the mendicant, that have been passed down to us, coming from the Blessed One, carried along in this tradition, about the Four Noble Truths, the path, Eightfold Noble Path, and the various factors that and signs and features, the qualities of reality that are suggested for us to investigate. So investigating impermanence, investigating not self, even investigating dukkha. Perhaps that's the first thing that I was indicating, seeing how the patterns are, that sometimes we get locked into a toxic pattern and sometimes we break out of that pattern. That's part of the investigation of dukkha. In the sutta that Ayya Sivijana gave last week, what was said was that a person is investigating, exploring, inquiring, discriminating, examining, making an investigation into that teaching. And they're doing all of this with wisdom. So in that case, the investigation is definitely directed towards the phenomenon that have been pointed out, which once we understand what the description is, we can compare that with our own personal experiences and see whether it's true or not true as it can be experienced. I'll pause again for a moment and see if there's any question or comment about the Dhamma Vichaya, or the discrimination of states, or discrimination of the Dhammas.
If I could, I'm looking at that Piyadaya summary that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. This investigation of Dhamma just sounds like a restatement of the importance of having right view.
Yes, it's very much related to right view. They say that right view arises from two things. One is the voice of another, and the second thing is mindfulness and clear comprehension, sati sampajanya. So then it has to involve cognizing these ideas and also working to integrate it with our own experience. It may be that for a long time we've got a preliminary right view because we haven't fully realized the entire truth, because we're not yet able to completely let go of all our attachments. But we have got perhaps a partial right view, and that's enough to keep us keep us going. So right view has an implication that it's something that has been realized, and at the full level of right view is almost identical to enlightenment.
What I
So
meant to say was that we're introducing these 7 factors, but it sounds like it's just a rehash of what we all well know that from other parts of from other suttas, right? We all know the importance of heedfulness. We checked that box long ago, and we all know the importance of accepting the Dhamma.
It's not just accepting the Dhamma, it's investigating the Dhamma.
I see.
You got to test it against your own experience.
Okay.
You got to inquire. You got to bring your own work to it. And I would say, overall, with each one of these, if you think of it that this is like a habit, a good mental habit. So like these would be like the 7 habits of successful people.
Okay, that makes more sense now. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. Then the next one is called virya, which is energy. And this is exactly the same thing as sama vayama, which is called right effort. And it's said that if you have had some experiences with remembering to be mindful, you had some experiences with investigating the states of mind, then where energy comes up is then you've got to develop, perfect, make it stronger. These are wholesome patterns. So you want to nourish and protect these patterns. So like if you have a good habit, but you give up your good habits, say you go on vacation and you say, well, I'm on vacation, I'm not going to do my good habit, then you've really hurt and weakened your good habit. But if you have virya, then you don't give up, you continue. You also have got the quality of being able to raise it up to a higher level when you need to. And you've got the quality of being able to, in a skillful way, to steer the energy so that it's not too tense and not too slack, so that the energy that you're exerting is in a certain way just right to keep you on track. And when the negative factors creep in, having a very strong energy to stop them as soon as you recognize them. It could be that, this is kind of like a story that somebody goes away on retreat and they stay in retreat for a number of years and they realize a deep meditation and they think they're enlightened. And as long as they're staying on retreat, they believe that they're enlightened. And then they come back and are subjected to the airplane and the airport and the customs and the crowds of people and all the noise. And it's so disconcerting. And then if someone says a cross word to them, then they lose their temper and become angry. So even after we practiced for a long time, it's still possible, we still have within us some of the seeds of the negativity. So when they come up, to stop them as quickly as we can, not to tolerate negativities, but try to do the work as quickly as we can. That's part of virya. That's at the level of working with the internal states of mind. At the level of working with the Dhamma, or the teachings of the Buddha, the way I heard it explained is that you heard the Dhamma with mindfulness. You heard the Dhamma and you remembered to think about the Dhamma. And then with the investigation of the Dhamma, you found out, oh, wow, this is really true. And then when you have that realization, you become very enthusiastic and you want to practice because you want to get all of the things that are promised in this Dhamma, because you've become convinced that this Dhamma, that these teachings are really true and that they really will be fruitful for you if you practice them. And so that's sort of like explaining it at the other level. So pausing again for a second to see if there's a comment or question about energy as a habit of the mind.
Forgive me, but what's lacking here is it tells you much about what is needed, but not how to summon such energy, which we all know we are very often subject to the sloth and torpor, and it's a very common hindrance to be lacking in energy. So yes, we all know that it is very important but how to summon it?
Right. It's a really good question. And what I believe, this is sort of my own thinking, and that is before we've learned to be the master of our own psychology so that we can make the mind do what we want it to do, then merely because of impermanence, from time to time, we forget to be sleepy and we find that we're energetic. And so at those moments, it's quite useful to make a note. How does it happen that that right now I feel energetic? What were the factors that were supporting that? And then try to see if it's possible to bring up those same factors on another occasion. And it could be that, I feel energized because I read something or spoke with a friend or something, and that caused me to be energized. Or it could be that I feel energized because I got enough rest, or whatever the factor may be. Noticing those and trying to repeat it, and then when we want to become energized, remembering a time and an occasion where we had enough energy. This is an example from my life. I spent a long time working 9-to-5 jobs in offices. And so I often found it, when I was starting in meditation, difficult to find energy for meditation. But if I remembered, when I get to the office at 9:00, I just sit down, I open my work up, and I start working. And I know very well what that was like and how to do it. And so then by using that metaphor, then I can say, when I sit down for my meditation, let me be just like going to the office, that I'm going to sit down, open my work, and start my work. And so something from my life can be, then I give myself a trigger to remember what energy is. And again, it's something personal from your own life that's meaningful is the best one.
Good.
I'm going to call on Diana.
Yeah, that's.
I think you're
that's
muted.
something I was good.
You're muted. No?
No, I unmuted it.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Just 1 second. Now this might be my system. Try again.
Yeah,
There you are.
Okay. What you were saying right there is it's like basically, I was going to say there's I have a degree in theater, and it's that's an acting exercise called sense memory. So, Damon, so way to remember that is in what you were saying, it was giving yourself a sense memory of something that made you remember that, the peaceful feeling. And when you want, and Damon, when you're in a situation where it's like, and you want to remember your peaceful feelings, you can do something as simple as putting your fingers together like that and remembering. You give yourself that trigger that helps you remember your peaceful feelings. If you're in one of those situations where everybody around you is everybody around you is like jumping monkeys, and you go like this, and you go, and remember to breathe all the way down, and not chest breathe, because most people chest breathe. They don't breathe correctly. I learned to breathe correctly because I learned to play a clarinet in sixth grade. So if you've learned to breathe correctly through meditation, taking a deep breath. I had a friend who would do his watch every 30 minutes. It would go off in a little alarm, and he'd go, "Time to take a deep breath."
Yes. Good.
So
That's very
sense
good.
memory. Okay, that was what I wanted to say.
This is going to come back again on the next factor, which is called piti. Now, when we come up to piti and passaddhi, people can sometimes become I think that this is only something that relates to jhana meditation, and not something that we can that a beginner in this Dhamma practice is able to cultivate. It is true that the factor of piti is described as being one of the factors of right concentration. But Mande Piyadasi speaks of it as just as more as a general mental factor, or a more general mental habit that can be cultivated as long as we learn to distinguish between grasping after sensual happiness and finding out how to recognize the pleasant states which are safe because they're not connected with the hedonic treadmill of sensual pleasure and appetite and craving and clinging. Some of the ideas that come to me about this, and in other contexts, you see a sequence which is called, first comes pamoja, which is called gladness. That's sort of like a weak form of piti. And then comes piti, which is like a full experience, something that is associated with meditation. And then comes pasat, tranquility, and then equanimity. So you could think of it in terms of gladdening knowing how to gladden the mind in a way which is as I say, which is safe. A joyful interest is one expression that's sometimes used for piti, or you could call it flow. So those times when we are choosing to set our mind in a certain direction, doing that awareness of the states, doing that practice of mindfulness, and we find that the mind is not getting distracted or falling away from what we're trying to do, but we've got the mindfulness, the investigation, and the energy together, and so then we are able to stay on the pattern that we set our mind to. It could be mindful awareness in daily life, or it could be in meditation, landing on the object of meditation and being able to stay balanced on that object of meditation. So at that time, this joyful interest would arise. It's easy to stay mindful because we're interested. Another way of thinking of it is in terms of contentment, which is not being dissatisfied with the way things are, constantly wanting it to be different. Like, I don't have something that I want, and so I'm grasping and reaching and looking and searching to make it become different, or else I'm dissatisfied with the way it is, and I'm constantly figuring out how to make an adjustment to get rid of something that I dislike. Those are examples of discontent. So contentment is just this attitude that's kind of like an onlooker, and it's say, well, okay, so something is present which is delicious and lovely and enticing, and say, okay, that's all right, very good, that's pleasant. And then something comes along that's disgusting or repulsive or painful, and the mind is just saying, okay, that's unpleasant, and just like interesting, what's it like to be with something unpleasant? What's it like to be with something pleasant? So it's because we're interested, the mind is not getting jerked around by like and dislike. And that's where we can find our contentment with different kinds of circumstances. The next cause of happiness that Piyadasi mentions, and which I like very much, is that nekkhamma, or renunciation, is a source of happiness. So if one is addicted to having a piece of chocolate every evening before bed, then there's always discontent there, that the happiness you got from the chocolate is never enough because it has to be repeated the following evening. So you continuously or repeatedly have the same need over and over again. So that's an unbalancing thing that's related to greed. But if you gave up chocolate and you don't need chocolate, then you're free. And it's not something that you have to do over and over again, because it's just not that need is not there. So in that way, the renunciation has got this wonderful aspect of enjoyment because of the freedom. There's a great story, but I think I won't go into it right now because of the time limitation, but someday you can ask me to tell the story about no cake. The child was beloved by the angels, or by the devas. He was sent to school, or he was at school, and he wanted some cake. So he told the servant to go home and tell his mother to send some cake. And the servant went home, but the mother said, sorry, there's no cake. And so then the servant, he had a plate, a covered dish. And the servant then comes back. But in the meantime, the devas put a celestial cake in the dish. And so the servant says, I'm sorry, young master, there's no cake. And he gives him the dish back. And the master opens it up and there's this delicious cake. And so he does this over and over again. And finally at the term, he goes home and he says, "Mother, please give me some of that no cake. It's the most delicious thing." But it's a sort of, this is sort of like a fairy tale about actually that no cake can be more lovely and more delicious than the most wonderful physical cake. The last way of gladdening the mind that I'll offer, and there are more than these, is reflecting on morality. If you do this remembrance, others may do harm, I shall be harmless. Others may kill, I shall not kill. Others may steal, I shall not steal, and so on like that. That's a way to gladden the mind. When we're in meditation, if we have found out how, or whether by our accomplishment or by an accident, it could happen once in a while, purely by accident, that we sit down for meditation and none of the five hindrances are present. And we have this lovely meditation because there's no greed, there's no lust, there's no sloth and torpor, there's no restlessness, there's no doubt. And we're just able to just land and stay in the meditation. And wow, it's great. Oh, so enjoyable. And so when that happens, this piety, this happiness may arise. And our teachers tell us not to be afraid of that bliss of a good meditation sit. Now, it is possible to, if you take it the wrong way, to then afterwards always be longing and wishing that you could get back to that same blissful meditation. But it's, if you take it the right way, it's not dangerous in the same way that some kind of addiction would be dangerous. So it's kind of a question, isn't it? Could I choose? I want bliss, and I shall undertake to train the mind to be blissful. And this choosing to favor these blissful states is not the same thing as grasping after pleasure. How can we distinguish between doing the healthy and wholesome things that are conducive to a happy mind that's different than running after pleasure and getting on that hedonic treadmill of addiction? I asked you the question. You can give me your answer.
Well, you're not taking drugs to get there.
That's true.
You're doing it in yourself. And when you find it in yourself and you're going, hey, I got there myself, my own self. And
Yes.
it's like, I don't need all that stuff.
Right. So the happiness that is not depending on anything outside.
It's here.
Right.
It's connecting there. The 18-inch journey. Going, and going, and I remember my anthropology teacher in college talking about being blissed out. You know?
Right.
It's a good thing.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead.
One more comment, please.
Yes.
I really love this part. I love Diana's comment and the funny story about the no cake.
Diana, please, I don't like being called Diane.
Yeah, Diana. Yeah, I have to say that the use of the word rapture is, is kind of comical, given its conventional it's conventional use nomenclature that we usually reserve for that term. So in the you keep using the word piety, right? But in the Piyadasa, he says the factor is rapture or happiness. So actually, what should we use?
I was using the Pali word, which is called piti, P-I-T-I, which is pronounced piety, not the
Okay.
English word piety.
Okay.
And I always think the Pali is better because it's more accurate.
Okay.
Now, when learning how to practice jhana and obtaining concentration, for some people, it is really intense rapture. It would be sort of like if you were walking down the street and you met Jesus. You know, you would, I mean, it's just really different than the usual. But
Okay.
training how to gladden the mind in ways which are wholesome and conducive, and training how to be free from the negativities and the hindrances is setting the stage for being able to realize more profound levels of happiness. Perhaps for some people, it may be that kind of like a miracle type rapture experience, or it could be something that's more like a oceanic kind of sublime kind of experience, or something that might feel extremely deep.
Okay.
So that's kind of what that's pointing to in terms of meditation.
Got it.
The
Okay. Thank you.
Pali word pasadi are tranquility, is referring to something like calm, balance, poise. We see this a lot in the steps of the breath meditation. Like you're aware of the breath, and then you experience calming the breath. So if the breath is like coarse and rough at the beginning, and then as you said, it gradually becomes more and more gentle and calm. And then you notice the feelings, and the feeling, it could be this piety feeling, this rapture, sublime, oceanic feeling, could be extremely strong and overwhelming, but then it becomes calm and gentle and more subtle. Or it could be that the activity of the mind, if you're doing that investigating, that at first the mind is, in a way, more active, but then gradually it becomes more calmed down, and it's got that balance and that poise. Piyadasi mentions something. This is technical. There's pasadi is referred to as, it's translated as tranquility of the body and tranquility of the mind. Apparently, according to the commentary, the kaya pasadi, the tranquility of the body, is tranquilizing all of the aggregates other than consciousness. So form, feeling, perception, and volitions can become calmed down. And because that's like a group, it's like a body in the sense like a group of things. I don't know whether this is an idea that was added on by the commentators, or whether I could find in the suttas that's supporting this particular way of interpreting it. And then the other is the calming the chitta, which is calming the mind, or again, we get into the debate about whether chitta is same as vijnana or not, but calming the mind. I'm not comfortable with saying calming of consciousness, because I feel that consciousness in a way is just another factor. It's not really the same thing as chitta. But I want to mention that there is another sutta. We may study this in more depth in the future. This is Samyutta Nikaya 36. That's not a good citation. Rahogata Sutta, which is called In Private. I'm putting the name in the chat. It says there are 6 levels of tranquility. When you come into your first jhana, speech has been tranquilized. When you come into the second jhana, the applied thought and sustained thought has been tranquilized. When you come into the third jhana, the rapture or the piti has been tranquilized. And when you come into the fourth jhana, breathing has been tranquilized. And when you come into the cessation of perception and feeling, which is sometimes referred to as the ninth jhana, perception and feeling have been tranquilized. And then for a mendicant who has entered the defilements, entered the asavas, who's destroyed the asavas, greed, hate, and delusion, have been tranquilized. This particular list of 6, I think, must be late, and it sounds quite commentarial to me, because the emphasis that we see about this attainment of the cessation of perception and feeling is something that we see here and there in the suttas, but it's considered to be an idea that it came along a little bit later. But I think it is useful to, if we're practicing meditation, to think of this tranquilizing as something that's happening in stages during the meditation. In a certain way, I was trying to, in the little guided meditation at the beginning, I was trying to give the ideas that you can experience something like being sensitive to the sensations, and then you can let that become tranquilized. Or you can experience the feeling and then allow the feeling to become tranquilized. And that process of tranquilizing and calming is what brings us towards samadhi. Samadhi is the 6th of the 7. When the body is tranquil and one feels bliss, then the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. And at that time, one has activated the awakening factor of immersion or samadhi or concentration. In particular, especially for those of you who are not very accomplished in jhana meditation, I would emphasize that the entry to jhana is when the 5 hindrances are, one has gained a seclusion from the 5 hindrances. So until you obtain jhana, you should practice vipassana towards understanding the 5 hindrances, how they arise, how they disappear, and how they can be cut off in meditation. So you have a chance to take a vacation from those negative factors of the hindrances. And having that time, even if it's a limited amount of time, of being able to take a rest from all the negative habits of the mind is so profoundly healing and beneficial. It's like resetting, rebooting the computer, or rebooting the mind, or erasing the motherboard, or something that all your bad habits. It's like as if all your bad habits are erased during that time. And then if you have got you've been practicing these factors all along, you've got some right view, and you know some things about how to practice, then when you emerge from retreat, you could notice very clearly if a bad habit arises for you, and then it's like you don't want it. And then you can gradually expand to make this a wholesome set of factors to be present throughout one's life. I'll call on Richard.
Thank you, Raya. A couple of points. Damon was talking about, how does this apply, these segment factors? If you look at that sutta in Samyutta Nikaya, Book 5, section 46, number 3 that we went over on Sunday.
Yes.
The reason it's called virtue is simply that's the first quality listed for the arahat that you're coming in contact here. And we know it's an arahat because it says accomplished in wisdom, accomplished in liberation, accomplished in knowledge and vision of liberation. So that's a description of an arahant. So that's why the Buddha is saying, if someone comes and listens to them, this is a progressive here. Listen to them, approaching them. That means you're listening kind of like in the crowd, but you're so interested you go and approach, the person, instead of just hanging back in the crowd, right? So it sounds like it's out of order, but it's not. It's you're going deeper in, right? Even attending on them, catering to their needs. They're a bhikkhu, so maybe you're bringing food and clothing and whatever. Maybe you make a hut for them or something, right? And then even recollecting them, it means when they're not around, you become so overwhelmed that you're still thinking about it and what they said and the person and everything, right? It says, and then going forth. So you've contemplated it so much, you've interacted so much, you've decided, okay, I'm going to go forth under this person, right? And it says, for what reason? Because, when one has heard the Dhamma from such a bhikkhu, one dwells withdrawn by way of two kinds of withdrawal. Now, the first is bodily. That means you've gone away to a secluded place. Many times the person is described as, okay, now they went to a secluded place, and then soon after, they became an arahant. So you're withdrawn bodily, and withdrawal of mind, right? Actually, the word is chitta. It's your state of mind. You've mastered the meditations. You've gone in and mastered the meditation. So this the last one is not so much referring to like everyday people, how do they approach it? I'm not saying there aren't ways to approach it, but it was specifically talking about someone who themselves is shooting, to become, you might say, or aiming for, enlightenment, right? So, and then it says, dwelling thus withdrawn, right? One recollects the Dharma, right? And mindfulness is awakened. Now, we know the 4 factors of mindfulness. These are all different, what you might call teaching Dharma points, okay, in 4 different ways, okay? It's a big heap, right? It's a big bunch of stuff. So when you've got that kind of like all in your mind, right? It talks about discrimination of states, right? So there's a Pali word here. Oh, I wrote it down. This discrimination of states means vichaya, right? Dhamma vichaya. Okay, so V is like
Dhamma
complete,
vichaya.
and Chaya is like a heap, right? It's like a heap. So you've got all this Dharma going on in your mind, Dhamma vichaya. You kind of put it all in order, and you're settling it in your mind, and you're trying to understand it deeper and deeper. And it, as you do that, right, comes to, it says, energy is aroused because you get so enthusiastic about the insights and everything that you're seeing, right? You become very awake, in your meditation or your contemplations and everything. And then that leads to spiritual, what we're translating here is spiritual rapture. But this word spiritual is niramisa. It means without any meat on it. And this is the same as the Buddha said when he was almost dying from austerities, and he starts recollecting his past life, and he remembers that he entered into first jhana as a young child. And he says, why should I fear that pleasure? You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with worldly sensual pleasure, right? So this is what it's saying, this rapture or joy, right, has nothing to do with worldly pleasure. So you're going in that direction, you're pushing forward there. And as far as translating the word as rapture or joy, piti, I heard Bhikkhu Bodhi discussing in a lecture that he says that there aren't enough words for some of the words in Pali. English has a vast amount of words. It's more than any other language, but certain words, it's like Greek and the word love. There's so many different words for love in Greek. Well, in the same way, there's a bunch of different words in Pali for certain things. And so Bhikkhu Bodhi says that nobody really knows for sure what some of these should really be. And so they just say, okay, I'm going to make this one rapture and I'm going to make this one joy. He says that quite clearly. And, I think he would know something about translating. So, so whether or not we say it's rapture or joy, it's not that critical because even the translators are not quite sure what would be the correct English word, right? And then when that joy arises, as you're doing samatha means to settle down. So you're doing your samatha, and your vipassana means that you're totally aware and you're watching the state of your mind. Okay, it's not just some abstract process like runaway or something. You're completely aware as it's going down. So the mind begins to settle, and it ends up in tranquility. And then that tranquility causes concentration to arise, samadhi, right? And from samadhi, one is able to enter into equanimity. Now, Buddha says that equanimity is purity of mindfulness. So this whole process specifically has to do, because it starts with mindfulness and ends in equanimity, with the last two of the 8 path factors, okay? Now, you can have mindfulness
in
for
the
other
factor of the
specific description. Yes.
in the
Go ahead.
in the factors of jhana, the 4th jhana says Bhandaji translated as a perfection of mindfulness due to equanimity, or others translated as perfection of mindfulness and equanimity. So
Right.
It's really kind of interesting how these factors are sort of like nesting on top of one another, that each one is incorporating all of the previous factors. So by the time you have this pasadi, you already, that the piti, the virya, and the dhammavicaya and the sati is all included in there. And by the time, if you put together, you've got your mindfulness and your investigation of the Dhamma, then you're already energetic. It's like the energy is almost right there. It's just energy is like the manifestation when those two things are combined. And then those three things together, that's rapture. And then so it does go on like that. And it's certainly true that with respect to this tranquility, this samadhi, and this upekkha, that those are all in a way nested together. That this equanimity, or the ability to be undisturbed or not triggered by things like the various worldly states. That is a description of equanimity, and that's also very much like tranquility or contentment. Or they're kind of similar states. But
Yeah.
I wanted, maybe Richard, you would have something to say about this a wonderful description in the sutta that you talked about on Sunday, that closely watching over the mind, immersed in samadhi. That's what upekkha is. It's this hovering attention. I've heard this described like a very skillful therapist has what they call evenly hovering attention, that they're just very even, very aware, watching over that mind in samadhi.
Well, that's why it's important to understand the word samatha, which is also used in the rules and regulations of the monastics, right? The Vinaya.
Mhm.
But in that context, it's used as settling a case of some kind.
Right.
So the word means to settle. So you're settling your mind down, but you're very aware. You're watching the process of settling it down. You know, some people say that when you're in these states, it's only afterward that you contemplate what happened. But remember this, the sutta where Buddha is praising Sariputta for having his heart, and he says stage by stage, right? He went through all the jhanas and everything, and he says he was aware of them, right, as they occurred. You know what I mean? So it's not that you go into some kind of altered state and then later you come out and you have some kind of memory of it. You should be vipassana. You should be very aware of what's going on as the process. And that's how you know to let go and move to the next process. Not get attached, just know what's going on, aware of it, let go, move to the next process, move to the next process. And not, you know, that way you're not caught up. You know, if you get lost in the process, yes, you're gonna get stuck at a stage for a while or something like that. Anyways,
Okay,
that's my view, but others might have a different view.
Thank you very much. We've gone over our time, but I think this has been a very fruitful conversation. I like tonight's talk very much, and I'm happy for everybody's participation, those who commented and those who listened. So let us close by directing our awareness to the image of the Buddha, and giving the homage to the triple gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivadami. Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Thank you, everyone, for your practice and your patient listening.
Thank you, Aya. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.